Graphing lines with a graphics calculator. We'll do a lot of work with our graphics calculator when we're graphing straight lines and in this course. So all they're asking us to do is create a table of values for this line here, then graph the line, but use our graphics calculator to do it. Just a couple of notes, you'll often see this sort of little setup. What this says is that x should have values between -3 to 3. And you can think of it as x is between -3 to 3. And that's just saying they want that to be a table of values. So you know your table of values is going to be x and y. And we would like values -3, -2, all the way up to 3 for x. And that's all that was saying. Now, to use the graphics calculator, there's a lot of different things we can get it to do. It's really essential that you learn to use your graphics calculator to graph a line and make a table of values. If you don't remember how to graph a line and make a table of values by hand, there's another video to check, but you should remember that one. So our steps, first step, we go to our y equals key. Now, that's here on the new calculator and in the same spot on the old calculator. So if you run out of batteries, I guess I'm using the new calculator. The y equals key. And it brings up a bunch of places where you can enter the equation of a line. We're using y equals 10 minus 2x. So you just say 10 minus 2, and there's your x key, if you remember, next to alpha. And you've entered the equation of the line into the calculator. The only thing to be aware of is if you've got a negative, so if this was a negative out the front, you would have to use the negative key and not the minus. So that's in, quit out of it, second function quit. So in the y equals key, enter the equation. You do have to use x in this case. You can't get exciting and use another number. Now, when you make a table of values, you first set it up and decide how big you need it to be. And here we decided we needed it to be between -3 and 3. And so our next option is table set, which is second function and the window button. So table set is up here. If you do second function table set, it asks for table start, and the little triangle is delta. It means the change in the table. That is, we're starting our table for this one at -3, and I want my table to go up by 1. So this is just saying this is how I want to design my table of values. You'll give that the starting value and how much to go up by for x. And that's usually going to be 1, but sometimes you'll want 0.1 or something like that. So table set just sets up a table of values. Sorry about my writing today. Hop back out of that, and now to get your table of values, it's up here. Second function up above graph. So 3, table, which is second function and graph. And this fills in the table of values for this rule. Sorry, we'll zoom in a little bit there. So -3, y is 16. And that's really easy. I seem to have skipped 1 there, I'm sorry. 1, 2, 3, my apologies. So it's really easy to get a table of values very quickly from this setup. It's definitely worthwhile popping the rule in, getting a table of values. So doing table gets the table of values. Then you can graph. Hop back out of that. You have two options to graph. When we do a graph from a table of values, we need to work out how big we need to draw our graph. So this graph needs to go from -4 up to 4 for x, and from 0 up to 16 on the y. And window lets you set that up. X can go from -10 to 10, that's big enough, it's bigger than we need. So that's the x minimum and the x maximum. X scale says we're going up by 1 on the x-axis, that's fine. Y minimum of -10, sure, no worries, but our Y max here should be at least big enough to fit this in. So let's say our Y max is 20. Y scale, it just says Y is going up by 1. So you're just making your window, your graph, big enough, but not too big. So once you've set that up, if you hit graph, it will graph the line for you. Window, so what the window does is it sets up your number plane, and you can see it's done a graph. Now another option is zoom and 9, and that will pretty much automatically graph you a nice picture. That will set up the size of the graph big enough. If you've set your window up and you've done something silly like making the minimum smaller than your maximum, then when you hit graph, you'll get an error for window range because you said it has to be, you said the minimum's bigger than the maximum. And if you try to set up your graph in the window and you made the scale something really, really, really tiny, your poor calculator is going to be sitting there trying to do all those calculations, and sometimes it will be a bit weird and take a little while. So if in doubt, zoom 9, but see it's gone from the graph there. So yeah, your window kind of needs to be set up well. Learn to use the window. So that's just graphing. You follow those steps and you can graph your line. Now often you'll want to see what the values are. Trace is useful for that. Trace makes you a point that moves along, and you'll get an x and y value. Sometimes you'll get a nice useful point like that. So you can see what's happening sort of with your trace key. The other one that's really useful is calc. That's second, calc, and value. So I'll just write those down for you. And what that does is it will bring up an x, and that lets you say, hey, when x is, for example, 2, what is y? So I should know this because I just graphed. When x is 2, y should be 6. But if you didn't know that and you wanted to find it for a question, when x is 2, tell it x is 2, y is 6, and it'll move to that point. So that's quite a useful little tip for finding y. So that's graphing lines with a graphics calculator. If you remember the way that each of the steps, relates to how you do this by hand, it makes it easier.